From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
It's been a busy week for announcements. Technology giant Infosys announces they are opening an office in Providence, promising 500 jobs in 5 years. TF Green continues to expand with Air Canada returning to the tarmac, and ribbon cuttings at the revitalized South Street Landing and the new Virgin Pulse headquarters. But with big taxpayer money involved, is Rhode Island open for business or for sale? Our guest on the first half of Newsmakers, Rhode Island Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor. Then, a progressive labor-backed organization has been making its presence felt at the State House and has big plans for 2018. Joining us on the second half, the head of the Rhode Island Working Families Party, Georgia Hollister Isman.
Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program from WPRI.com, reporter Ted Nesi. Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you.
Glad to be back, Tim and Ted.
So I threw a lot at our viewers at the top of the show because there were a lot of announcements. But let's talk about the big one on Monday, Infosys coming to Providence. A quick elevator pitch, if you could, for our viewers who missed it.
This is a global company, Infosys. They serve many of the brand name companies that we all know across the world. It's an IT consulting, analytics, and broader advisory company. It's extremely well regarded. They do work with companies that we know like Citizens Bank and others, but they've never had a proper office and a real operation in Rhode Island, and they're going to create an innovation and design hub here in Rhode Island that will serve the nation. This is a company that will, if you will, they're starting to insource jobs in the United States of America. They're an India-based company, India headquartered. They're going to create 500 jobs in Rhode Island, new jobs, over the next 5 years. And they're jazzed about the universities, the talent pool, the quality of life, all the things that we know. Ravi Kumar, who is the global president of the company and has been very, very involved with this deal, has explored Rhode Island. He really didn't know it much prior to the initial contact and has come to love it. And you heard him at the press conference. He said in public, unprompted, I'm going to now help you recruit more companies to Rhode Island. I'm so impressed. He volunteered that fact. This is one of those deals where a Commerce Corporation staff member of the brand new unit that attracts businesses, our business development unit, reached out to Ravi directly through LinkedIn and was after him, and once he entered our environment and got to know Governor Raimondo and his board members did, Rhode Island sells itself, and our governor, as you know, sells it.
What
even
elevators
better.
do you ride? I have a
That was a funny story about the LinkedIn. He did say, I was at the news conference, he said, like, I was ignoring it for a while, but she was persistent.
Check this out, if I can add this. I just heard from a colleague that his wife got contacted through LinkedIn by Infosys. She lives in Rhode Island. She works in Massachusetts. She's got a tech background. They're recruiting her to come back and work at Infosys.
There you go.
Through LinkedIn. It's an incredible thing.
So you mentioned something that came up from viewers unprompted when we reported on the Infosys deal. I got an email about this, that we heard from it on social media. The Infosys in the past has used those H-1B visas to bring in workers from overseas to work in the United States. And a number of viewers asked us, well, they say they're going to create 500 jobs around, but are going to fill some or many of those jobs potentially with workers from overseas using those visas? Can you have they given you any guarantees that they're going to use local workers for this?
That's their whole purpose. What they're aiming to do is across the United States hire thousands of Americans so that they have workers who are in every sense closer to their clients. Understand the local jurisdiction, the local environment, and have relationships in the business community. So that's their whole purpose. Therefore, I'm very confident that that's what they intend to do in Rhode Island, and this will be an office with national reach. It's very exciting.
The state Republican Party says the governor has President Trump to thank for Infosys coming to Rhode Island because the president pressured the company not to move jobs overseas.
Well, I think the best response to that is what Ravi Kumar, the global president himself, said at the press conference. He said it's just not true. The game plan for Infosys prior to the Trump administration and unto itself is to hire domestically in the United States, and they were convinced by Rhode Island among only a small handful of jurisdictions in the U.S.
Millions of dollars in state tax incentives over 5 years to land this deal. And I'm just wondering, if you've set this high bar, this level of expectation for any company that's thinking about moving here, that, hey, we better get a big payday or we're not going to do it. Do you keep moving that bar up to
no,
dish out the state money?
As a matter of fact, we moved the bar down for this transaction. We didn't offer the maximum incentive permissible under what's called the Qualified Jobs Program. That's the program that refunds to a company the new personal income taxes that the jobs create. Now that's a nice structure because it's the new jobs that are creating that revenue and you're pledging back a portion. We actually notched down the level of incentive because we looked at other places in the country where Infosys is doing deals. We pegged against it and we adjusted for quality of life, or excuse me, for cost of living in Rhode Island. And so our number was lower than usual.
Why would any company come here without, you say you notched it down, but it's still, what, $10 million? Why would any company come here without getting some money from the state?
A couple of comments. First of all, it's important to note this will be a revenue positive transaction for Rhode Island, meaning we only pledge a portion of the personal income taxes, the corporate income taxes, the sales taxes, the other taxes that the company generates and that the spin-off activity generates after that. That all comes to Rhode Island. We calculate that at $18 million over 12 years. That's the pledge period for Infosys. $18 million to the positive, subtracting out our incentive investment. Now, having said that, Tim and Ted, I do think that over time, not instantaneously, but over time, we can ratchet down the amount of incentives. Right now, though, we need to be competitive. If you look at Indiana, if you look at North Carolina, where Infosys has done other deals, they're offering tens of millions of dollars to Infosys to do those deals. We have to compete. North Carolina and Indiana are not low activity economic places. They are, in fact, very effective economically right now. They're very in demand. So we're coming from behind. We had the highest unemployment rate in America in 2013 and 14. Now we're below the Northeastern average. Now our GDP is beating the rate of growth for New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts. We're proud of that. But it's only a couple of years ago that we were in the bottom of the list. We still do need to compete with these other states.
We won't hold you to an exact estimate,
Right.
but roughly, how much money has Commerce RI authorized through its incentives program since they were put in place by the Assembly 2.5-ish years ago?
I would not be able to offer you a total off the bat, but I can get back to you with a figure like that.
Okay. I think the Journal said almost $50 million on the qualified jobs alone so far. Is that correct?
I don't know offhand. I have to get you a figure.
I ask that because one of the big critiques you hear about the incentives is, why don't we take that same amount of money that we're pledging over this period of time and instead of using it toward incentives for specific companies, do broad-based tax cuts, then every company in Rhode Island would benefit from that. What do you say to that critique?
I say to that, it's both. You have to do both. North Carolina and Indiana as good examples. They've also gotten Infosys investments. They're doing both, and in some instances they have even lower tax scenarios, and they're still paying tens of millions of dollars per big project with a big company. That's the way of the world. We can't unilaterally disarm, but we can do it smarter. We can do it in a way that invests in advanced industries and other important growth industries for Rhode Island, and that's what we've been doing. We can make sure we're investing in existing Rhode Island companies as well as newcomers to Rhode Island. That's what we've been doing. But I will say, I think that it's a wise investment to do these two things in tandem. What has Governor Raimondo done? She's eliminated the energy tax on business across the board, obliterated it in her first budget. We've lowered the unemployment insurance tax to the point where even the Tax Foundation has rocketed us up in their ratings from around 50 to in the 20s among the states for our UI burden on companies. We've lowered the corporate minimum tax twice or three times now so that smaller businesses don't suffer from that tax. We're doing both.
Let me. You mentioned small businesses. That's the other thing that comes up frequently when these big announcements come. They say, well, they clearly, great that we get GE or Johnson & Johnson, but what about the smaller businesses that do employ a lot of people? They're probably watching today. People own maybe they own a laundromat, maybe they own a little manufacturer or something. What do you say to those folks?
Maybe they own a restaurant. I'm so glad you say that, Ted, because beyond the headlines, and I understand this, what's important and what's exciting to cover is these big things, but Machu Picchu restaurant in Providence is a well-regarded Peruvian restaurant. They wanted to open a second location in Providence. We just gave them a modest loan through our first ever state-backed small business loan program that's been operational under Governor Raimondo, and they're able to open that new restaurant. They closed their loan this week. In this big week with all this other activity, Machu Picchu restaurant was able to replicate. In this big week in Rhode Island, the Pawtucket City Hall operation has embraced our e-permitting system where they can put building permits and demolition permits and other permits online and get the job done for small businesses faster. They took 70 permit applications and got them done this week. in Pawtucket. So that is Rhode Island Mushroom Company is a terrific company that's mushrooming in its growth.
Oh man,
I know,
right.
really, really bad.
We're gonna end
That's
this
my
segment
humor. that company is now doing an incredible amount of sales. They just sold in this Thanksgiving week more than they did in the entire previous year, and they got a small business loan from Rhode Island Commerce. So these things matter just as much, and I'm glad you gave us a chance to talk about it.
Some people like to put mushrooms in their stuffing, which is probably why. So when people heard about Infosys coming to Providence, we don't know where they're going to go. We don't know if they're going to build a new facility or go into an existing one. Is that correct? That hasn't been nailed down yet.
They're going to go into an existing facility because they've been searching existing buildings, but we don't know precisely where yet.
So what did everybody think when they heard that?
I don't know.
They thought Superman building.
Oh,
right?
I see.
So if I'm sure you can't say if they're going into the Superman building or not because you probably don't know, but do you have an update on where things stand with the Superman building?
Yes, I can tell you that all the time there are new ideas and new aspirants for that building. Now, it's a complicated project. There's a great deal of work that needs to be done to retrofit it and prepare it for modern office uses, but we have multiple interested potential tenancies. That doesn't mean any of them work out, doesn't mean it happens overnight, but there have been even new aspirants since the last time we talked.
So are you hopeful that there could be, could you see in the next year an announcement about finally some redevelopment? I guess, how advanced is that? People can call you and say, hey, what's up with the Superman building? But that's different from getting down to brass tacks.
I don't like to predict these things. We were finalizing the negotiation with Infosys over the Thanksgiving weekend. I don't like to predict these things so far in advance when it's really still an idea and it's still a very preliminary negotiation with multiple parties, multiple possibilities. So it's hard to say, but I do think that in the long term there will be a reuse for that building.
All right, so we have about a minute left. Sure. I have to ask you about the Paw Sox news this week. The Senate president said no vote this year, but probably a bill out of the Senate at the beginning of the year. But still seems like the House Speaker is pretty cool to the idea. From the outside looking in, a lot of people think it looks pretty grim for the Paw Sox. What do you say?
I think it's a great deal for Rhode Island. And I think that it's getting all the more real that there could be a relocation of this team outside of our borders to another state, especially to Massachusetts, because those communities are seeing that there's a little bit of tumult here in Rhode Island. So I think this is a very good deal to do for the Rhode Island taxpayer. The amount of revenue that the new venue will generate, the new ballpark, once it's constructed, is about 2.5 times the amount of investment the state would have to make, and that's on an annual basis. Will 2.5 times our payments be covered on an annual basis to cover the debt service. This is the right thing to do for Rhode Island. It means jobs. It means vitality for Pawtucket that deserves it in that location, right near Slater Mill, perfect location off the highway.
Is an election year hurting the chances for the Paw Sox?
I think it's a number of things. Let's face it. It's 38 studios. It's a concern about ever investing public funds in a venue that could benefit private parties. But I think this is one of those examples where it's good for our state. We will see a positive return, and it will mean a lot to a community, Pawtucket, that's been down on its luck for too long, and that deserves this boost.
All right, when we come back, a group that has been pretty influential at the State House in 2017, but you've probably never heard of them, Rhode Island Working Families, joins us in the second half of Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my left, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, our guest on the second half of the program from Rhode Island Working Families, Georgia Hollister Isman. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
As I sort of joked going into our commercial break there, not a lot of people probably know about your organization. So a quick description of the Rhode Island Working Families Party.
Yeah, Rhode Island Working Families Party is relatively new to Rhode Island. We're about 18 months so far, and we're a political and advocacy organization that works to make the priorities and needs of working men and women a priority in the State House, in our politics, and in our public policy.
So when people hear, Rhode Island Working Families Party, they might think a political party in, Republican, Democrat, moderate. You're not putting up nominees on the ballot or anything like that, correct?
No, the history of Working Families Party is that it was founded in states that have fusion voting, so it is an official party in those places. But here, I like to think of it as we try to do some of the things that you would like a party to do, but you don't always get from your major parties. We try to articulate a clear vision and values about what we want candidates to stand for, mobilize activists around those values, hold politicians accountable to them, and actually advance them into law.
How do you see your relationship to the Democratic Party in Rhode Island, which of course is a sprawling group of people, especially ideologically? But, do you see yourself as a wing of the Democratic Party? Obviously, you're officially and technically apart from it, but how do you view that?
I think of us as being obviously not, like lots of the people we support are Democrats, but not every Democrat really agrees with us on our values. So I do think of us as independent from the Democratic Party and as having, I think, a clearer and more contained set of values. Look, we're looking for candidates, be they Democrats or some other kind of voter or some other kind of candidate who are willing to advance the needs of working people, support worker standards, support a fair tax system, increase economic inequality, and advance those kinds of progressive values. And that's not everybody who considers themselves to be a Democrat, but it's a bunch of people. And
I want to stay on that because your group played a key role last year in the successful effort to defeat then Majority Leader DeSimone, a Democrat, in his primary. Marcia Ranglin-Vassell won that election. We had a debate here on it. After that recent fight over Joe DiLorenzo, and I won't get into the whole shenanigans on what happened with that in the Democratic Party, but Speaker Mattiello criticized those who he argued are pitting different wings of the Democratic Party against each other. He argued that's not an appropriate thing for people to be doing. What do you say to that criticism from the Speaker, that Democrats shouldn't be fighting other Democrats?
The way we see this is the values that we're advancing, like earned sick days, which is this bill we just passed, like a higher minimum wage, like taxing wealthier earners to pay for critical services. Those are broadly popular in Rhode Island. Majorities support them across the state, not just Democrats, of everybody. And we're looking to advance those values in the legislature, and we're looking for people to help us do it. It's not really about wings of the Democratic Party. It's about how can we move the values and needs of working families forward.
And the word progressive, I don't think, has ever been used to describe Democratic House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello. Like with John DeSimone, are you going to make any effort to unseat Speaker Mattiello in 18?
I wasn't sure when we started, this was our first legislative session, this last session, how it would be working with the leadership in the House, and we went forward with this very ambitious earned sick days bill, and I think the leadership wasn't sure whether they would support it for a long time, and eventually through some negotiations and through a lot of convincing with thousands of constituents contacting the leadership in the House, their own voters, they were convinced to move it forward. So I do think we can move a lot of good progressive legislation forward with the current leadership structure. I also think it's our job to help push the whole House and Senate to the left on these issues and convince them that there's a real demand from their voters to advance economic justice legislation.
So we're actually coming up about a month away now from the start of the new legislative session. Do you have, earned sick days was one of the most high-profile legislative pushes in any group this past year. It did get over the finish line in the end. Do you have a similar, top-tier thing that your group is going to be putting its energy behind next year? Do you have a laundry list? What's the plan?
It's somewhere in between. We're still sort of formulating the list. It's a short list of things that we think it's really important to be talking about this year. Top of that list is minimum wage. Rhode Islanders who make the minimum wage are going to get a small increase coming up on January 1st.
$10.60?
I think it's just $10.10 originally, and then it will be a $10.50. But that
number moved around a little bit.
Yeah, it moved around quite a bit, right? But that's not really enough if you think about what somebody actually needs to be able to take care of themselves, even just a single person. We think that number needs to look a lot more like $15 an hour, and we're going to be working hard on a $15 an hour minimum wage bill, not immediately, but to sort of gradually ratchet up the minimum wage over the next few years.
There are people who choke when they hear $15 an hour. They think that's just too high. They talk about, what about the teenager who's got a part-time job? What about the small businesses that just don't have the, what do you say to those folks who are going to be
or the jobs that they say will disappear because they just can't hold on to it? So wouldn't you rather have the job that pays $10.50, $11, $12 an hour, or the no job that could have paid $15 an hour?
Here's a moral and a practical argument, right? Like, nobody who works should live in poverty. That's the moral argument, right? The practical one is that's why it's sort of gradual. It's not, doesn't go up to 15
So you're not saying go to 15 on the 1st of 19?
Yes, it increases gradually. gradually. Same thing's on the ballot in Massachusetts this coming year. I think that's a smart way for us to be pushing to say, look, in the end, we should have an economy where people who work can actually take care of themselves. So we're working on that. Along with that, I think it's really important for us to take seriously the fact that the economic conditions for all workers aren't exactly the same. So we're going to work on an equal pay bill to make it easier for women and people of color to know when they're not getting equal wages.
And what would that look like? How would that
there are
work?
a couple pieces. So it's been passed recently, some other places, including making it illegal for companies to ban people talking to each other about their salaries, right? If you get paid more than I do at our company, there's no way I know that unless we're able to have a conversation about it. And also banning employers asking on the application what your prior salary is, because that tends to perpetuate historical discrimination.
Interesting. Let's talk politics
Yeah.
or legislation. So Progressive Rep Aaron Regenberg, who you know very well, is now running a primary campaign against Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee. It's actually, somewhat to my surprise, already getting attention from national outlets. It was on CNN as a primary to watch for 2018. How important is that political campaign to your group and your priorities?
I think that's an exciting, we've already endorsed Rep. Regenberg for Lieutenant Governor. He's really been a champion, and we've had experience, he was the lead sponsor of the Earned Sick Days bill, of watching him really be able to move some stuff forward. So we have a lot of confidence in him. And it's a really exciting opportunity to say, look, these values that we have and that he shares, including increasing the minimum wage, including taxing higher income earners more to pay for the budget deficit and other critical human needs, we think those are popular statewide. We think we can win on those issues statewide, and Aaron's campaign is a wonderful opportunity to sort of have a contest about those values across Rhode Island.
Just so I understand how your organization can get involved, are you actually allowed to fundraise for candidates and that sort of a thing? Well, how can you help with the campaign?
So we have a couple of different, it's a little complicated, we have a couple of different entities. We have a PAC, we have a C4.
A political action committee.
Yes, we have a political action committee which can contribute directly to campaigns. We have members across the state who we can communicate with through our membership organization as well.
What is your membership at this point?
I think it's like, it's got to be like 6,000 or 7,000 people who have like affiliated themselves with Working Families Party, and growing all the time.
So you were in the studio for our first half guest, Commerce Secretary Stefan Pryor, talking about moving companies here, but that comes with a cost, usually tax incentives. And I'm sure jobs coming to Rhode Island, you and your organization must like, but progressives don't usually like the idea of those incentives. So where do you fall on that when you hear Infosys is coming in for $10 million over 5 years, 500 jobs?
I'll tell you the values that we bring to thinking about that kind of economic development. We always want to know that when we're spending public money on something, that we're really getting our money's worth, and that it's better for workers and for Rhode Islanders than spending that money in some other way would be. That those are good jobs with good benefits, that they're going to people who live in Rhode Island, that they're going to a diversity of people who live in Rhode Island, and that if those promises don't materialize, then we have some way of holding companies accountable.
Former Governor Lincoln Chafee has repeatedly said he may challenge Governor Raimondo in next year's Democratic primary. Most pundits think he'd probably try to get largely from the left side of the party to take votes away from her. Would your group consider supporting Chafee over Raimondo in the primary if he runs?
We haven't started thinking about the gubernatorial election yet. It's unclear what the field is going to look like. We've had some opportunities to work with Governor Raimondo around Earned Sick Days and some other issues as well. So we would certainly take a look at it as that field materializes. I'll tell you what we're looking for. We're looking for races at whatever level they come, state rep, higher up the ticket, where the values that we're looking to advance, Working Families values, are really at stake in the election between the two candidates. And sometimes those are going to come in primaries, and sometimes they're going to come in general elections.
With the PawSox, there's sort of this battle going on the left. The far left, you hear a lot of pushback because of the potential incentives that are going to be at play there, but then you have organized labor supports it. You get a lot of good construction jobs there. Is your organization going to get involved in that debate, or have you? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have a specific policy on that particular deal. I think I bring the same questions to that I just sort of articulated, is like how many, like what kind of jobs, how good are those jobs, how much are they going to Rhode
Some of those answers
Islanders?
you have now, though. Have you made a decision on that?
We have not decided about it as a group.
Okay.
If you're looking ahead to next year, do you think there will be a lot of primaries in? Do you think we'll see a lot of challenges in the Democratic primary? You know, some people are talking about it being like they see it heading for a civil war because of what happened with DiLorenzo and the Bernie Sanders energy in the party, everything else. What do you think it's going to look like?
I think it's going to be an interesting year. I think there'll be a lot of races where these kinds of discussions are happening, and where voters are really engaging with like what kind of representative, senator, governor, lieutenant governor do I really want? What kind of values do I want that person advancing? And I think it'll be a good year for people tuning in and paying attention and saying, no, actually, I really do want somebody who's going to support working families, who's going to focus on economic inequality, who's going to help protect the common, help protect us from the Trump effects from the federal government.
We have 30 seconds left on the paid sick days. There was a floor. I think companies 18 workers or fewer, it didn't apply to them. Are you going to revisit that? And I might have that number wrong, but I know there was a floor. Are you going to revisit that in 18, or are you happy with where it is?
I'm very happy with this piece of legislation. I think one thing that's really important is that those smaller companies, they still have to protect people's jobs if they're going to take time off. They still are able to take time off to care for themselves or a loved one, even if they don't get paid for it.
We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.